Hi, I'm Alan Jackson. I'm the pastor at Dunwoody Baptist Church in Atlanta, Georgia. I'll share a cup of coffee with you today. The subject is mission trips, and particularly youth mission trips. So I'm thinking that mission trips are a good idea, that it's a good idea for there to be experiences where students get to go and make a difference in somebody's life or some church's life or whatever. And so today I want to talk a little bit about what that means. Now, I don't know what your experience is. You may be in a small church, you may be in a huge church, but likely as not, either you have or will soon have some mission experiences with your students. Let's kind of frame the discussion. First and foremost, a mission trip ought to be discipleship and not tourism. It shouldn't be just a place, exotic place to go and see all the sights and maybe do a little bit of cleanup or pray up or pay up or whatever. There should be a discipleship process. At our church, a youth mission trip starts 9 months out. 9 months before they go on a trip, the students are meeting almost weekly, and they're developing the kinds of things that missionaries need. How to appreciate the culture, how to develop their own testimony, scripture verses that are important, training for activities that they're going to be doing along the way. Maybe looking at videos or reading material about the specific place that it is that they're going. And so it's not a tourism, it's a discipleship program that leads up to the trip, but is not just on Friday we pack our stuff because on Sunday afternoon we're going to leave and be gone for a few days. Second thing I'd love for you to think about is scope. When Jesus was asked about being a witness, when he told the disciples in Acts to go be his witnesses, he identified Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and the ends of the earth. And I think appropriately, a lot of people have looked at that and said, okay, Jerusalem, that's close by. Samaria, that's a little farther out. Judea, a little farther out, ends of the earth. So maybe Jerusalem is your community. Maybe Judea is your state. Maybe Samaria is the United States or whatever country it is that you live in. And maybe ends of the earth is ends of the earth. So you're in Alabama and you're looking at this, and let's just say, oh, I don't know, my brother serves in Prattville, Alabama, so that's as good enough as any. Let's say that Jerusalem missions would be things around Prattville, food pantries, benevolence ministries, after-school tutoring. There are always opportunities for those, and even if your trip is to the ends of the earth, Jerusalem training is a great, great place to start. Judea, maybe that's the state of Alabama. Maybe you head for Gulf Shores, or maybe you head way up north to Huntsville, or maybe you go way out to the northwest or to the southeast. But there's an idea that you begin to prepare for what it is that God is doing in the state of Alabama. Domestic missions, the United States. Maybe a bus, maybe a plane, maybe you go in cars, I don't know, but you're going somewhere in the United States. You know that English is probably spoken, at least to some degree, and so you kind of get an idea of what it is that you want. Ends of the earth, we happen to be going to Toronto, Canada this summer with our students. For the last 7 years or so, we've done a bike clinic there where we rent one of the major thoroughfares. We rent a square, a town square there in the middle of Toronto, and we set up barricades and stands, and we do a free bike repair clinic. And our students get to share Christ with people who are in line, begin to hear their stories, and it's a wonderful mission experience. Well, here's how we look at it. Jerusalem, we've done some bike repair stuff in the Atlanta area. We have done missions kind of things, backyard Bible clubs. The students all participate in Vacation Bible School in some way, shape, or form to get them ready to do the kinds of things that we'll do in Toronto, the block parties, the neighborhood parties. Judea, our students have gone across Georgia. We have been involved on the other side of Atlanta with some ministries that are going on in Clarkston, with some food ministries, some cross-cultural ministries, because we know that in Toronto it's a heavily cross-cultural town. So Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, we interface with other bike repair kinds of things and figure out what they're doing. Ends of the earth, we end up going to Toronto. So begin to figure out what the scope of student missions maybe looks like, and make sure that the intentionality from start to finish is that it's discipleship and not mission tourism. I want to suggest that maybe the students get to buy in. Maybe there's some work days, or maybe there's some fundraisers, maybe there's some stuff that's going on. A lot of the places where you work, you're all too ready to raise the money for them, to let the church pay for them, but there's just something to be said for them having buy-in. At our church, we keep a ledger, and every time that we have a fundraiser, whether that's a car wash or a garage sale or a spaghetti dinner, we hire students out to do yard work for people in the church or in the community who need to hire a teenager for the day, and then that money goes into their missions account, and there's a number that they're trying to get to that's a part of the cost of the trip. And so they get to have some investment. They get to tell their stories of the crazy people that they worked for and the crazy stuff they did, clean up houses or yards or move things or whatever it is. I think it's an incredibly important thing that students have some buy-in. Let me kind of tell you how we evaluate missions at our church. We always look to see, is a mission experience four things. Number one, is it experiential? Is there a place that every participant in your group can have a role? We don't want students just sort of stepping back and letting other students do all the work. So if you only need 2 people to lead a backyard Bible club, then have enough backyard Bible clubs to where everybody gets to be a part of a 2-person team. That way they can't hide behind other students. Is it experiential? Do they get to try new things? Do they get to put their hands on new things? One place that we went was an inner city place, and we asked the people in the community, could we look for places to create community flower beds to add some beauty, some color, and every time we were digging in a flower bed, people from stores or merchants around came out to ask what it was that we were doing, and conversations about the gospel got to take place. Is it experiential? Is it educational? Do you kind of move the needle? Does a student learn something about a culture, about a task, about a missionary, about an activity, about themselves? Is it educational? I hope that all of our mission experiences are educational to a point, that our students learn just a little bit more. Is it sustainable? Is this the kind of mission trip that relies on you and your personality and your connections? Is it something that can keep happening even after you leave? A sustainable mission trip is a relationship that's built with somebody. It's a chance for you to understand the priorities and the passions of one of your missions partners, but also to hand that off to some of the people in your church, to let moms and dads and students buy in, so that perhaps if you are called to another church, that they would still be able to do missions, maybe even that place, maybe using the tools that they learned to do missions somewhere else. Is it relational? Does it put you in places where your people can get to know your people? In other words, students can get to know students. Adults can get to know adults. Adults can get to know students, and students adults. You can get to know the mission partners, the people that you're working with. A lot of churches choose to go to the same place year after year after year because they have relationships with missionaries, and they know that what's going to happen in that place is going to be a good experience for their students because there's enough relationship to where that mission partner is getting ready for you. All right. Couple of things. Maybe you do some role play. Maybe you put students in a place where they have to wonder what it's like to be in a new culture, to have somebody come in. There's some hard questions that are asked. Does the missionary really need you in there? And if so, can you learn everything that you need to know in order to help, to move the needle a little bit. You got to choose where you're going. And I always say that with a trip, you have to do one of two things as your primary. You have to either choose your site, the place that you're going to go, or you got to choose your date. So as you're preparing for the best mission trip possible, get on the calendar, figure out if you're locked into a particular date, and then find a mission project that's going to fit that date, whether it's Judea, Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, ends of the earth. If that's a priority, maybe you rotate. Maybe you do Jerusalem one year, Judea the next year, Samaria the next year, ends of the earth the next year, so that everybody, by the time they graduate, has a local, a domestic, a nationwide, and maybe even an international mission trip. If your church is small, it may help you to be a part of one of these mission organizations: Servant Life, Student Life, MFuge, World Changers, and I know that I'm using old names, forgive me, I'm old, but some of these camp experiences where you can join the inertia or join the critical mass of a larger group, so that if you have only 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 students, that they are going to have a great experience because they join in with the buying power, the resources of large organizations. Last thing I would say is be sure you take care of logistics. Be sure that you're very, very aware of all the forms that you need. For instance, we are going to go to Toronto this year. I told you that, and one of the students has to go late. And so instead of riding the bus across the border with everybody else, I'm going to go in and be a part of the mission trip for a few days as a pastor. And so because this girl has to go to a funeral, her grandmother passed away, and she's going to have to be late going to the mission trip. It's coming up pretty quick. She's going to fly in with us, with the team that's going in with me. So now I have to make sure that I have an affidavit that allows airport personnel to know that she has permission as an unaccompanied minor to travel with me. When we cross the border, I've got to make sure that she has all the appropriate documents. So logistics is a really, really big deal. It always helped me to get a sort of a blank sheet of paper, and several weeks, if not months before a trip, I would lay out, what are we going to do on Monday? What are we going to do on Tuesday? What kinds of things? Where do we know where our students are going to eat? Do we know where they're going to sleep? Do we have the appropriate adult-student ratios? Do we have all the equipment that we need? Do we have transportation when we need it? Do we have a plan in case something goes wrong, a rain plan? So logistics, just make sure that you read plenty of other materials, or maybe ask a few questions today about how to set yourself up for success in a discipleship process called a mission trip.